free Golden Eagles for War Thunder. Download the app in the description below. Hey guys, welcome back to War Thunder and welcome to some P-38L gameplay. Now, this plane at 4.7 is what I'd like to refer to as the hidden gem. It's one of those planes that you will find in particular brackets. So when you're progressing through different tech trees, whether it's with planes or tanks, and it doesn't matter which nation we're talking about here, you will find that certain aircraft can join together in bracketed parts. So the P-38L is hidden underneath the P-38J. Now, whilst the J model is a still fantastic plane, I remember flying it out when it was first introduced and getting it spaded, the L is a completely different world. It takes everything that the J is good at and just makes it a little bit better. So why do I think this plane is a hidden gem? Well, it's quite simple. I do think there are a lot of players that are currently progressing through the American tech tree or some of the other tech trees where there are bracketed vehicles in. They tend to just jump over them. They will knock the P-38J, which is the predecessor to the P-38L, and they'll just move on to the P-51s and they'll move immediately to the P-80. And the only reason they would ever want to research the P-38L is because there is a limit on how many planes you have to unlock in a particular tier to progress to the next tier. I don't really remember how that works because, again, I haven't researched anything in that, I've had everything researched for the past couple of years, so kind of lacking that information, but I do know that there was, in the old days, a limit, and I'm sure it still is, at how many vehicles you have to have unlocked and purchased before you can progress to the next tier. Now, whilst we're pretty much AFK climbing here, and this is one of my favorite things to do with props, and one of the reasons I came back to them is because I know that I, complain a lot about AFK climbers as such, but if you do know where certain climb paths are, where the enemy will be, roughly in what time period, I do think that AFK climbing is still one of the easiest ways for you to get to altitude, because frankly, I don't see much fun in just staring at the screen for a couple of, minutes and you gaining altitude. And talking about gaining altitude, there's something about American heavy fighters and double-engine fighters that really always comes in as a surprise, as a pleasant surprise, and that is their climb rate. Whether it's the F-7F Tiger Cats or the, hell, even the F-82 has been massively improved since the early days of it being introduced. The P-38L is no different. It climbs like a monster. And this is important because it's a plane that isn't really designated as a turn fighter. It's not going to do well in that role, we all know that, so it would be preferable for you to have a bit of altitude, especially in the case here where we're on Korea and we're fighting against Russians. That means a lot of Yaks and a lot of Lalas are going to be at the same altitude or slightly below us, but fact of the matter is that we want to be above them. We want to be in an energy state advantage. But there is still a slight problem. As you can notice, I'm not climbing with my team. I'm not climbing with the pack. I'm sort of going solo off into the side. And the reason I'm doing this is twofold. Number one, I had that slight mishap on the airfield where I was a little bit too ambiguous to take off and I damaged my tail control, which set me back about 30, 35, maybe 40 seconds. So I'm lacking maybe 500 to 1,000 meters of that initial climb that disables me from being able to take this match from a very aggressive standpoint. I'm going to have to take a defensive approach. And I don't mind that because I know what the plane's performance is capable of, and I also know that I want to try a little tactic that I haven't used in a long time, which is called individualized baiting. The trick is that you separate players from the pack and then go into a 1v1 dogfight with them. It makes it a lot easier, and knowing that I'm here within medium to low tiers, I mean 4.7, I consider 4.7 a rather low battle rating. I don't really play anything below 8.0 most of the time. I don't expect players here to be overwhelmingly confident. And I know confidence is something that we can have a bit more of a discussion on, but in general, the main problem is, as you can notice there, that already there's, LA5s that are way above me. For me to go into this literal clusterfuck of aircraft would be a suicide. So instead, I'm taking the approach of, well, trying to get one player to separate from the pack and start following me. If I had taken off early, if I was above them or at the same altitude, then I would have probably just gone into that mess of aircraft and just start dogfighting whatever there was. But now that I'm on the side, I know that I can take a 1v1 much clearer and much simpler and have the advantage over the enemy player, because in a 1v1, I think overwhelmingly it's going to be player skill that outweighs the performance of the plane, at least if we're talking about mid to low tiers. Of course, in top tier, if we're talking jets, players are usually so experienced that there's not much wiggle room for your experiments when it comes to different maneuvers, but here we can play around a bit and we can test how this plane performs in a 1v1 against an LA-5. And immediately as I said that, one of the LA-5s has separated from the group and is starting to follow me. And so what I do, I don't turn into my teammates, I simply turn away from any potential player in the area. Now the LA-5 notices this and sort of does this lagging maneuver away, which gives me a breathing opportunity to turn back into him. The reason I'm doing this is not really to force a head-on, but to force an energy state equalization, which means that I don't have him on my 6, and I don't have to climb rapidly. I can get some speed back, I can cool the engines while doing so, and I am in a position where I can go, if I want to, in a head-on. But of course he evades that and I turn into him. This is where we engage in a more or less turn fight, and you can see the LA-5 has much more capabilities in that regard than I do. So what do? I simply peel off. I've got the speed, I put the plane into a zoom climb, and the LA-5 has no way of following that after having performed 2 very sharp turns. What we've done right there is, we've taken 2 planes on reasonably equal states of energy, and we've swapped them up so that I'm now above him, and I've got more energy. Which means I'm now in the advantage to pretty much do whatever I want, since it's a 1v1. If he had any teammates in the area, then that would have been a problem, then I would have to, deal with them first before I can engage him. But since it's a 1v1 and we're completely isolated with his nearest teammates about 9 kilometers away, I can freely take my time and shoot him down. And this is where I realize the P-38L has one of the most incredible abilities of roll rate I've seen ever on a prop aircraft. It makes no problems holding up with him, and with the guns mounted in the nose, it doesn't take more than a single burst of the 50 cals and that 120mm AN-M2 cannon to set him on fire, and that's my first kill. But there's no time, as we're moving from one dogfight to another. A P-47 squad mate of the LA-5 that I took out is now coming in to engage me. He's at about the same altitude, he's been climbing, so I do just a little bit of an extra trick here. I go into a dive, so I'm below him, but I'm exchanging altitude to speed. And as I reach about 460 kilometers per hour, I evade his shells and then simply put the plane into a very, very hard loop. The P-47 simply can't follow. He doesn't have the speed, he would stall out if he tried, and this loop, well, because of the speed of the P-47, it puts me in a perfect position to engage him, and with a little bit of flaps, the P-47 simply can't go anywhere. His best chance would have been to simply dive away as fast as possible, but really, not much you can do. And a little trick here, if you're firing 50 cals, aim for the tips of the wings. 50 cals have a very high chance of not killing something if you're just aiming for the central fuselage, and in general, try not to aim for the central fuselage. It's the most structurally integral part of the plane. Go for the wings, they'll pop straight off, and you get yourself an easy kill. And at this point, it's important to notice that the enemy team has already lost the match. Not just are they too low on sheer numbers of players, they're too low on numbers of players where they can actually make a difference. They've got nobody at altitude, they've got nobody at speed, the Yak-3 there gets set on fire, and it just sort of looked like it was going to be one of those landslide matches. But there's a slight twist at the end, nothing significant, just one of those annoyances that happens quite commonly and we can have a bit of a debate on. But at the moment, there's 2 things I have to do, which is first, try to get as close to the Yak-9 that's engaged in the F4U Corsair, and cool the engines as we're doing it. Now, as we're talking about the engines, I have been using manual engine controls here. I'm a little bit rusty with it. I think I also need to recreate another tutorial for it. But in general, I like to have a mixture between 75 and 80% because I'm lazy. So I just keep it at most altitudes. I'm sure somebody in the comment section will let you know, if you ask kindly, what the exact numbers are for the plane and what will perform best. The Yak-9K is going into a very slow turn. I mean, he was barely turning at all, so I set him on fire. No problems there. Follow him through, make sure he dies, and that's our 3rd kill for the match, and really, that's the end of the enemy team. 1 player remains, and of course, there's only one logical place to look for when you have a player that already has a kill, but hasn't been taken out. Chances are he's not up in space, chances are he went back to the airfield to rearm and repair. And this is really where the annoying part comes in, because I don't like dogfighting over the airfield. Whether you're flying a biplane, or you're flying a top-tier jet, or a top-tier prop, airfields are one of those annoying places that you don't want to go next to. It's either too accurate, or it's either not accurate, when you really don't want to take your chances. You don't want to take your odds. I have a 3-kill match here, I can get that 4th kill in, and make the game quite nice, so I don't really want to risk it too hard. So I'm going to use a tactic of keeping at about an altitude where AAA can't be too accurate. Now, I'm not sure about this. This is just my opinion, my observation, but it feels like AAA is more precise the lower you go. That it takes into account not so much the distance from the airfield, but rather the altitude. So I would like to keep the plane at about 2,000 meters, just underneath the current cloud limit, so that I can spot the enemy player. There it is, the P-63. And at the same time, hopefully not receive too much damage. The idea of, for example, hiding in a cloud, I wouldn't bet on it, since I'm not sure if AAA is programmed or coded to the point where it takes into account there are clouds and there's a smaller chance of it hitting, but it's still a bit of an RNG system. So I'd like to keep my chances, finish this match with 4 kills and not get taken out. So I follow the P-63. I can see that he's more obvious than not camping over the airfield. I mean, he has nothing much else to do than to maybe commit into a head-on and go into a turn fight. He knows that I'm in superior energy state, so I just go into a massive, very aggressive zoom climb, get myself to just underneath that cloud limit, just about over 2,000 meters, and that should be enough for the AAA not to reliably hit me. But again, don't quote me on this, this is just my approach to it. Everybody's having a bit of a nasty time with AAA every once in a while. You can get shot down from 8 kilometers, you can get shot down from, point-blank range, and sometimes you'll have an enemy aircraft, circling around your airfield and simply nothing happens. But it is what it is, we have to take it into account, so we'll be as cautious as we possibly can be. And I guess whilst we're exercising our cautiousness of basically turn fighting above the enemy airfield in a cloud, looking for that little grey dot of the P-63, it's worth mentioning a couple of things about this plane. Now, stock, it's not going to be as incredible. It's lacking the hydraulic upgrade, which is going to make your aileron roll rate potential much greater, and the roll rate really is what makes this plane amazing. It's not a particularly good turner, but with the use of flaps at medium to low speeds, you can make it work for keeping on to the enemy 6. The guns, as always on most American planes, extremely reliable, extremely handy. That one 20mm cannon along with 4 50 cals is more than sufficient for killing anything you come across. The engines have a massive amount of performance, and probably my favorite thing is that the plane doesn't overheat too badly. Now, with the overheat mechanics having been changed, it will happen, it will happen that your engines will go red and glow amber, but in general, with the use of manual engine controls and a bit of de-throttling and a bit of increasing mixture, you'll be able to cool down those engines with absolutely no trouble. So, what playstyles are preferred to the P-38L? For me, I like again a bit of a combination of a healthy energy fighting to boom and zooming type role. It's not a turn fighter, I wouldn't bet on it, but if you're fighting something, maybe German, something that doesn't really turn very well, think Focke-Wulfs, then by all means you can stick with them quite easily. But one of the things I haven't yet had the option to test out, I've been a bit busy over the past couple of weeks, as you probably noticed if you follow me on my Snapchat or Twitter account, it's been that because of that great roll rate, I would really like to go out there and try this plane from a aggressive defensive flying perspective. Think something like a Focke-Wulf 190, which means that you go from having a plane on your 6, a player diving on you, and then rolling and forcing an overshoot, and then killing them. The plane, I think, would be more than fit for that role. Of course, as long as you don't get hit, and being that you are a very big surface of an aircraft, that can happen quite easily, and with the elevator being one giant piece, it could get blown off. But again, haven't had the option to try that. Again, most of the matches have been against the Russians, and with Russians, really a simple tactic applies. Make sure you're above them, and make sure you don't commit in a low altitude turn fight, and you'll be perfectly fine. Anyway guys, that's all the time I have for the video tonight. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure to let me know what you think I should fly out in the comment section below. And as a bit of an apology for the lack of content, I've been dealing with a cold for the past week. I'm still not completely cured, as some of you might be able to hear. My nose is still a bit nasally. In other news also, one of my 1080 GPUs has died, so I had to send it back to Germany. I did that tonight. Had some other issues with the PC. I'm also in the middle of midterms and whatnot. It's been a very hectic couple of weeks, a lot of emails, a lot of work has been done, and hopefully over the next couple of weeks, as we're entering the happy month of December, I will do what I've done last year, which is to try to bring out as much content as I possibly can. Anyway guys, take care, and I'll catch you in the next one.